From legends like Dame Judi Dench criticizing the season, to Leslie Manville and Imelda Staunton defending the creator's intentions, here's how the Crown cast reacted to the most controversial moments from Season 5. This season was the most controversial one yet, and that's saying a lot when talking about a show based on the biggest monarchy in the world. Season 5 was all about Queen Elizabeth in the 1990s, which, as most fans of both the royals and the show will know, was an extremely controversial time for the British monarchy. Of course, some of that made its way to the screen as well. It's one thing when a bunch of kids are trolling a show on Twitter, or if critics are bombing its ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. But it's completely different when people like Dame Judi Dench are calling you out. One of England's greatest actresses criticised The Crown when the new season dropped. Judi believed that it was necessary for the show to have a disclaimer, confirming that it wasn't based on reality, but it was mostly fiction. Judi wrote that the show was blurring too many lines between historical facts and made-up sensational narratives. For example, she mentioned the whole subplot of King Charles plotting for his mother to leave the throne, and how that had no strong basis in reality. If that news were actually real, it'd be a huge deal, and everyone would be aware of it. But this wasn't the only subplot that she had an issue with. Judi also talked about the show's portrayal of the Queen as a parent, and how horrible she was shown to be. According to Dame, the whole thing was really unfair, not just to the monarchy, but also to the audience. Don't get her wrong here. The actress wasn't trying to challenge the showrunner's artistic freedom. They can do whatever they want with the characters and stories, as long as they agree to treat and present them as just fiction, with a disclaimer at the start of every episode. Not very hard, is it? Some of you may say that Judi has no stake in the whole thing, and it's really not her job to tell the producers what they should be doing. Her reputation isn't being damaged here. Plus, it's not like she's some authority on royal history, who knows exactly what's factual and what's falsely portrayed by the series. And you're right, she isn't. But royal biographer Sally Bedell-Smith is. She's also with Judi on this, saying that the show is harming the public's perception of history and the royals, and feeding them false information. That's not where it ends, though. Smith says that this has been happening since the very first season, and the show's always been full of lies. But it's gotten much worse in Season 5, which just doesn't sit well with her. You know, it's not just the royals that are being disrespected here. There are also dozens of other people that the series shows as side characters, like the former British Prime Minister John Major, who has his own character in The Crown. And guess what? He's also calling the whole thing a barrel load of nonsense. His words, not mine. Major also agreed with Judi and Sally, saying that the show's been completely tweaked from reality just for the sake of a completely false dramatic impact. And honestly, he did make a very compelling argument here. You see, Season 5, just like any other season of The Crown, had many scenes showing the Queen's private audiences with her prime ministers, and all that went on behind closed doors. But as John's spokesperson told The Guardian, these discussions have always been completely private, and that's never going to change. So obviously there's no way that the showrunners had any idea about what was going on there. I mean, they'd be the last people to have access to this kind of information, so they've got to be making it up, right? And of course, people like Major, who actually have their reputation on the line here, aren't going to like the fact that these made-up scenes are being presented as moments etched in history or something. And as his spokesperson said, they shouldn't be seen as anything other than a malicious work of fiction. Naturally, when such big names are out there making huge public attacks, the team behind The Crown will be forced to speak up. And they have, starting with the creator, Peter Morgan, who said that it's not the series that's trying to be controversial here. It's just the fact that Season 5 of The Crown is set in the 1990s, which was a very difficult time for the royal family, especially Prince Charles and Diana, who were drowning in a pool of controversies. While the show tried to portray those controversies, as it was expected to, Peter doesn't think that he disrespected anyone in any way. According to him, the portrayal has always been objective and kind. What's more, Morgan also said that he had immense respect and sympathy for what the family had to go through back then and would never want to sensationalize it in any way. But despite him making this statement and also agreeing to add the disclaimer Judy had called for, most people were still doubting his intentions. Thankfully for Morgan, he has an incredible cast to back him up, like the amazing Elizabeth Debicki, who plays Diana in Season 5. According to her, contrary to what most people believed, there was a lot of research that went into the show's creation, and it wasn't just made-up lies. In fact, Debicki claims that each storyline, conversation, and every single dialogue was treated very carefully. The actress also praised Morgan here, saying that he'd always taken the show seriously and sensitively. In another interview, Debicki also mentioned that it was made very clear to her, since she entered the series, that no one can truly know what goes on behind closed doors, and The Crown had never even made that claim in the first place. Instead of shunning the show for all these reasons, maybe people should focus their energies on admiring it for what it really is, a show and a creative work of art. If you think about it, a lot of the show's beauty comes from the fact that the series has a lot of room for interpretation, as Debicki pointed out. She said that The Crown isn't steering anyone in a particular direction or taking sides. It's quite the opposite. Viewers are allowed to perceive what's happening based on who they are and what views they hold. And for this actress, that's the sign of a great drama. And her co-star Jonathan Pryce, who plays Prince Philip in Season 5, agrees with everything she said. Pryce reminded the troubled critics that the show had always been a drama series, and most viewers would already know that, seeing as how they've been watching the show for the past 4 seasons. This isn't to say that he's dismissing the sentiments of people like John Major. In fact, Pryce appreciated that, saying that Major was well within his right to express his discomfort because he was technically part of the show. But other people, like Judi Dench, had no business saying all that she did. I've got to say, it looks like Pryce really didn't like her butting in here, as he mentioned that he was hugely disappointed by his fellow artists. While Jonathan was obviously offended, his co-stars Imelda Staunton and Leslie Manville were a little more understanding. Imelda, who plays the Queen in the 5th season, said that she understood where the harsh backlash was coming from. The real Queen had just died, and everyone in England was grieving for her. Of course, they were going to be more sensitive. Staunton's on-screen sister Manville also agreed with her, saying that there was a great deal of compassion for the Queen, and she understood why people were feeling hurt over these portrayals. But this isn't to say that they agreed with those people. Of course not. Both actresses agreed with the creator's statements and said that his series was, in fact, a love letter to the late Queen. Imelda said that she didn't think of it as undignified at all. In fact, for her and for everyone else in the cast, the portrayal was actually very true and respectful. She also reminded everyone that Morgan's been writing about the Queen for a very long time, since 2006 to be exact. So of course, he knows what he's doing here. The actress said that Morgan had always shown both sides of every character, but he hasn't ever pushed his own views. As Imelda said, he'll leave that up to the audience. Leslie agreed with everything her co-star said, insisting that the show never crosses the line. So there you have it, from Imelda and Leslie's defense of the writer to Dame Judi Dench not approving of the way things are going with the show. This was how The Crown's cast reacted to controversial moments from Season 5.